Well, good morning, everyone. This is Mike O'Malley here with the Hurricane Outlook and discussion for June 6, 2020, recorded around 8:40 a.m. Eastern Time. Well, today's video is going to be based solely here on Tropical Storm Cristobal, which is now a 50-mile-per-hour tropical storm with a pressure down to 992 millibars. It has undergone intensification during the overnight hours and will likely now continue to do so all the way up until landfall here in Louisiana. And this has some implications going forward, and we'll talk about that here in just a couple of minutes. Now, first of all, again, here's the track forecast. Currently, right now, positioned directly to the north of the Yucatan Peninsula, heading due north here. It's still about over 300 miles away from the Louisiana coastline. Expected to make landfall here sometime by tomorrow afternoon or evening. And then eventually this is going to make that subtle jog back towards the west here after making landfall, and will continue to ride up the coastline, or continue to ride up the spine of the central Louisiana region over there during the next couple of days. Now, again, this is expected here to be intensifying as it comes in. Current intensity forecast does show this being about 60 miles per hour right upon landfall, although it could be a tad bit stronger during that time. Tropical storm warnings are in effect mainly to the east of the system because this is a heavily easternly weighted system. Tropical storm watches are in effect towards the west of the system, where there's not as much deeper convection to kind of actually pull a lot of the winds down to the surface and actually kind of mix them all the way down. So tropical storm watches are in effect to the west of the system, while tropical storm warnings are in effect to the east of the system over here. There's also a bit of storm surge concern. Over 5 feet of storm surge, about 3 to 5 feet of storm surge can be expected for portions over here in eastern Louisiana and Mississippi to the east of where the center makes landfall. And that's very important because this, again, being heavily easternly weighted, is going to be pushing a lot of the storm surge up here into portions of Mississippi and Louisiana, as well as all the way down in through portions of the western Florida coast, all the way down through Tampa, with 1 to 3 feet of storm surge expected there. 2 to 4 feet around the Florida Big Bend region and the Florida Panhandle. 3 to 5 feet over here in portions of eastern Louisiana and then into Mississippi, including Gulfport and Biloxi. There is a chance that this storm surge could be a tad bit higher than 5 feet at that time, given if the storm does intensify enough. Now, if we take a look here at the latest recon plane that was in there, this is from tropicaltidbits.com. They did find a pressure down here of a 993 millibars, just about a millibar above the official NHC forecast. And again, there is some thunderstorms that have developed near the center. You do notice all of the stronger wind to the east of the system, even deeper convection that is off towards the north and west of the actual center. So there is convection off towards the northwest and then eventually this eastern, forming kind of this comma cloud shape. And if we take a look here at the visible satellite floater from tropicaltidbits.com, again, you do notice what we've been saying all along here is that this is a very easternly weighted system, although it is certainly beginning to try to tighten up into that more classical looking tropical cyclone. Again, we have a lot of this moisture off towards the east, forming this kind of comma cloud where there's almost devoid of any convection near the exact center. Although we are starting to see maybe a thunderstorm try to get going near the center. This will eventually try to wrap around with time. There's little wind shear across this region, so there's not going to be a strong amount of wind shear that's going to hamper thunderstorms from forming near the center. It's all of this drier mid-level air that was near the center last night. The reconnaissance aircraft in there last night found a pressure that was about 30 miles due west of the center, but did find a mid-level relative humidity of about 30%. So that's going to hamper any significant storm development near this region. The southern edge is a little bit moisture here, and then of course the eastern side is where all of this convection really likes to be right now. And if we take a look here at the COD Meteorology website, the same looking here, but we're just a little bit to the north of the system. Again, we are already starting to see some of the effects here in the Florida Peninsula and Panhandle, all the way down in through here portions of extreme southern Mississippi in Louisiana. There is now some of the cirrus outflows starting to show up here from Cristobal. This is now indicative that there is very light wind shear across this region allowing Cristobal to actually kind of wrap some of the thunderstorms in near the center if that dry relative humidity, if that drier air can actually be mixed out. It does look like so far that we haven't seen any significant dry air intrusions to actually really weaken the system all that much. We have seen a continued strengthening. Again, being heavily easternly weighted, this is going to push a lot of water up here, as of course the center will be making landfall here. That's going to be pushing a lot of this water up here into portions of the Florida Big Bend area. This area right here is especially prone to storm surge flooding. This area is also very prone to storm surge flooding, and as well as this whole area. But the two most areas of deep concern right now are the Big Bend area of Florida. Now, it is a little bit better because you don't have a tropical system pushing the water that way. You don't have it making landfall over here like we saw in Hermine in 2016, where it made landfall over like there, and it pushed, over about, over a foot of storm surge in that region and caused some flooding and some damage to the piers in that area. We have a system moving more due north here that's pushing some of the storm surge laterally up to the north, but that's still going to be a big concern for this area out here, as this area is especially vulnerable to storm surge. And if we take a look, this is the radar coming out of the Tampa Bay area. Again, you already noticed how we have some of this deeper convection that's coming around the center that's moving due north right now. This is going to provide for very heavy rainfall for portions of the western Florida peninsula over the next several days. Really, now that Florida is in its wet season anyway, you're not getting much relief from the wetness pattern that's going to be now setting up. Again, we have rainfall extending over the whole entire Florida peninsula, central Florida peninsula here, and extending all the way up here to near Jacksonville and Gainesville, Florida, even here in the Florida Big Bend, which is this area right in through here. The more sustained, convection is out here where, some of the deeper bands are. That will be kind of moving ashore, down there over the next several hours or so. Again, this is only the start. The system is expected to pump up more moisture. That's meaning more rainfall for the western Florida peninsula here over the next several days as this continues to move off towards the north here at about 12 miles per hour now. Now, if we take a look here from tropicaltidbits.com, looking at the CDAS, sea surface temperatures, it's just another way of measuring the actual sea surface temperatures. And where Cristobal is right now is sitting in a pocket of about 27, 28 Celsius waters here. And the water temperatures only get warmer throughout this region, 27, 28, 29 Celsius over here. That's more than supportive of tropical cyclone formation and maintenance across this region. And taking a look here at the upper ocean heat content, this measures how deep the warmer water goes. Again, once you start getting up here towards the greens, yellows, oranges, that's where you start to have the more substantial upper ocean heat content, the more potential for latent heat releases in the atmosphere, more potential for tropical cyclone maintenance and intensification. And we're certainly seeing that all along Cristobal's path, really. This is going to pass over a very substantial upper ocean heat content area. This is going to allow it to strengthen even more, and it will likely do so. Again, we've already seen that within the reconnaissance aircraft that has been in there. They're heading back now towards the second pass. They're going to come down here and likely kind of fly sort of this pattern over here. So again, they are certainly in there this morning and have found pressures to be lower. Again, that upper ocean heat content, that's only going to allow this storm to strengthen a little bit more. If we take a look here at the 850 millibar vorticity, or the spin in the atmosphere about 5,000 feet off the ground, again, towards the reds and whites is your higher cyclonic spin. And you're certainly getting that down here where you start to see these whites show up. That is the center and the circulation here of Cristobal. Now, again, there was some significant concern the other day that Cristobal was actually going to head into the mountains of Guatemala and actually weaken down here. That has obviously not happened, and we've seen a resurgence of Cristobal now becoming a deeper tropical cyclone, and it is expected to move up here over the next several days towards the Louisiana coastline. Again, this is going to be a big storm surge and rain maker for portions of the Gulf Coast here of the United States. This is going to be a big easternly weighted system. If you take a look here at the vertical wind shear, again, there's not a lot of deep layer wind shear across where our center is, maybe 10 to 15 knots of shear. 20 to 25 over the eastern part of the system, but generally towards where our center is only about 10 to, maybe 15 knots or so over the system. So this is going to be allowed to move off towards the north here over the next few days and gradually intensify. Again, current expectations is that this will intensify to a 60-mile-per-hour tropical storm right before landfall, but this is going to be strengthening all the way up until landfall. So again, it is going to be important to understand that, as we saw like with Hurricane Michael, this is not going to be anything like that. Let me kind of put that out there. This is not going to be anything like that, but this does have a chance to make it a run for hurricane intensity. Certainly, if this thing can actually start to wrap up some of its, convection right near the center and actually become a lot more centralized there. So again, we're going to have to watch this here very carefully over the next day or so. Landfall is expected sometime tomorrow afternoon or evening here across portions of Louisiana. So again, we're going to be watching that. We will continue our 3 updates here until the system makes landfall and then kind of reduce down from there. So again, hope you all have a great rest of your morning. Certainly be safe out there. Take all the warnings and advisories from the National Hurricane Center. I will be back here later this morning for the 11 o'clock advisory. Hope you all have a great rest of your morning, and I will be back here at 11 o'clock.